Ginger Constantine. I am the CEO and co-founder of Pleo Pharma. We are a company that was founded to try and help people who have cannabis addiction or cannabis dependence, trying to help them with the symptoms that they may experience. Okay, so we actually presented two posters at this year's CPDD meeting. CPDD is a scientific research organization, one of the oldest organizations dedicated to addiction, and they really are on the front end of research in the addiction field. So the two posters that we presented, the first one was a qualitative research study looking at patients or people who are currently using cannabis. And we were asking the question, what type of symptoms do they experience? How rapidly do they have symptoms? And in order for participants to get into the study, they had to be current users and have previously experienced cannabis withdrawal. They tend to be heavy users, meaning that they were using at least 1.5 grams a day of cannabis, and this is self-reported use, and they had to have experienced withdrawal in the past. It's a very interesting population because this was a qualitative study done by semi-structured interviews by an outside organization. And the participants were 15 participants, male and female, different socioeconomic backgrounds, who really had previously experienced withdrawal. On average, they said they had about 8.5 withdrawal episodes in the previous year, going up to a lifetime of 201 quit attempts. So this is a significant issue. Withdrawal, daily or near daily cannabis use is estimated by SAMHSA. The government numbers follow addiction statistics and occurs in about 21.6% of 21.6 million people in 2024. Of that, about 20.6 million people were reported to have cannabis use disorder. And cannabis use disorder is a disorder, a substance abuse disorder that's well codified in the DSM-5 criteria. So cannabis use disorder is in the DSM-5, as is cannabis withdrawal. Cannabis withdrawal is one of the symptoms of cannabis use disorder, so really they go hand in hand. It's almost a false construct to separate them. Cannabis withdrawal happens in between 50 to 95% of these daily heavy users. And we're developing a product to help mitigate cannabis withdrawal. What we have found and what our data has shown is that cannabis withdrawal is a reason that people continue to use cannabis and continues their dependence. We did a study, and we presented at CPDD last year, and showed that the data when we looked at what predicted withdrawal and what predicted abstinence, the number one thing that was really predicting abstinence was whether people had experienced withdrawal early on in their use. So we found it very important to try and really look at the withdrawal symptoms in this qualitative research study, and so that we could utilize the questions and the information for our phase 3 study, which is currently ongoing, to see if our product was indeed helping people with their withdrawal. So that's a little bit of background on cannabis use disorder and cannabis withdrawal. The qualitative interview really showed that people were very significantly impacted by their withdrawal symptoms and by their use disorder. And we were a bit surprised to find out how severe the symptoms really are. And these are all self-reported. These are patients or participants, study participants reporting how severe their symptoms are. And the other thing that's surprising is how quickly the symptoms occur. We've all read about, maybe there's some withdrawal symptoms, you'll hear some people say, oh, just get over it. No, these are significant symptoms that it can include sleep problems, cravings, irritability, restlessness, abdominal pain, and physical symptoms. there are a host of symptoms that are now being associated with withdrawal. Probably people have heard of cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. And traditionally, we thought about cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which is a vomiting condition that occurs associated with cannabis use, as maybe being in people who have way too high levels. That may well be true, but it also seems to occur when people stop their cannabis and they start to withdraw. So our product is being evaluated for mitigating withdrawal in patients with cannabis use disorder. Back to the poster. So the poster showed that in these interviews, patients reported a very rapid onset of symptoms, and within 2 to really 12 hours. And we have also seen this in our clinical trials, as well as in our clinical trial data. It also showed that people really were noting the symptoms that I listed earlier, such as sleep problems, irritability, cravings, physical symptoms. In the poster, we had a couple of quotes from a couple of patients that were really describing the symptoms that they experience. And one patient really, or one participant, really gave a very interesting scenario of how her symptoms start. Unfortunately, she was swearing in that, so I'm not going to repeat it here. But she summarized that her symptoms started with kind of a hunger and a gnawing abdominal pain. And then it progressed to the point of irritability. And then she had sleep difficulties when she would withdraw, when she was without her cannabis. And then really frank anger and irritability. And that she would not treat people well. So that was our qualitative study, and very interesting. We learned a lot about irritability and people feeling aggression. Some people said that they felt irritable or aggressive when they were at work. So that led us to go back and look at the data in our randomized placebo-controlled phase 2 clinical trial that we have completed a couple of years ago. And in that study, we went back and we looked at irritability, looking at an irritability domain of certain questions. And again, we found that patients really felt very irritable when they started to withdraw. And what was interesting is we had statistically significant benefit and less bothersomeness with the irritability symptom in the PPO1 treated patients, which is our product, than when the when the participants in the study were using placebo. And there was a 42% reduction. The other thing that was interesting in that data were that the placebo patients continued to have irritability over time. So this isn't just a short-lived, you're going to get past this in a couple of days. This was continued over the 34 days of drug treatment. So they were getting placebo. The PPO1 patients continued to have a decrease in their irritability, basically back to what I would think would be a fairly normal level of irritability. The mean age of the population, it was a good diverse population in the randomized clinical trial. The mean age was about 31 to 32. People had been using cannabis for a long time, about 17 years, 16, 17 years, had started using it about age 16. We did have a couple of people who had said that they had started using around age 7 to 10, which was something also that was surprising to us. One of the things that I've been particularly interested in is the association between irritability, aggression, and anger, and some of the violence that we're seeing in our society today.